Hi guys, welcome back to our channel. If you are somebody who has a really low CRS score and are not sure how to immigrate to Canada and are considering the international student route, or if you're someone who's just wanting to study and wanting to come to Canada for the same, then this video is for you. In this video, we are going to go into detail on some of the pros and cons of coming to Canada as an international student. Now, I have seen some videos out there where they talk about these pros and cons, and most of it has approached it only from a cost perspective. But I wanted to be a little different. So, in this video, please make sure to stay tuned until the end so that you can gain some valuable information on some of the great things of coming to Canada as a student and also some things that you need to be aware of. So, without further ado, let's get straight into the video. Guys, if you like the content of this video, please make sure to put a thumbs up and also make sure to subscribe to the channel so that you will not miss out on any future videos that we make. Thank you guys. Let us talk about the pros of coming to Canada as an international student. The number one pro for me is understanding Canadian culture and norms, especially in the workplace. Now, if you're somebody who's just recently moved to Canada, you might have been asked this question, or you might have found out that, do you have any Canadian experience? Now, what employers generally mean when they ask you for Canadian experience is, do you have an understanding of how things work in Canada? Would you be able to hold a one-on-one business conversation with a client, understanding Canadian values and norms, and also be able to make sure that you're providing the best customer service possible? Now, you must be wondering, how is this different from Canada to other countries? But I can tell you that things are really different. Let me give you a couple of examples. Back home in India, especially with supervisors and clients, I'm used to addressing them as sir or madam. But one of the things that I noticed when I came here is that you address people usually with their first names. Now, this was very different for me when I initially started calling people by their first name because it just wasn't comfortable and I wasn't used to it. But then attending various networking sessions and mixers as part of my university arranged programs and events, I was able to get myself comfortable in terms of being able to address people with their first names, as well as making sure that I understood that I was calling them with respect. The other thing that I learned is the concept of personal space. Back in India, with your colleagues or co-workers, you usually tend to socialize with them and become friends over the course of time. But over here, things are completely different. In the workplace, people are generally very professional with you, and they expect that you conduct yourself also in a very professional manner. You have to make sure that when you're talking to somebody, you maintain eye contact. You are completely professional, and you understand some of the meanings of what you say, like in terms of certain words and certain circumstances. Even apart from that, I realize that people differ in how they prefer to be communicated to. A lot of people prefer, let's say, only email communication versus face-to-face communication, and especially now with the advent of COVID, a lot of people prefer virtual conversations. And so this differs based on each person, and this can only be learned when you spend considerable amount of time learning about these different people and what they do. And so definitely going to school helped me because I was able to in a group environment understand and learn from some of my cohort peers and classmates who a lot of them were domestic students, and I was able to learn what are some of these mannerisms, make mistakes, and if I make mistakes I was able to gain feedback from them, which would be very difficult to do so in a workplace. So definitely a big pro of coming to Canada as an international student. The second pro I wanted to talk about is having a support group to help you through your time in Canada. If you have not checked out our earlier video on the harsh reality of living in Canada, please do so right here. But it's one of the major things that we spoke about in that is how loneliness can play a factor. In fact, 6 months of the year in Canada is usually pretty cold, and when people are living, let's say, in basements and other isolated structures, it becomes really hard for them to find a social network to connect to. If you're coming in as an international student, one thing that's great is that there are other international students that are always around you who are going through a similar situation as you. So it's easier for each other to understand the problems that the other is going through, and people generally tend to form really good groups through this. As an international student, you are also exposed to other local Canadian students, and when you start to interact with them and become friends with them, you get to understand the local culture, especially some of the festivals that are celebrated here. Canada being a multicultural country, you have functions like Halloween, Christmas, you have Chinese lunar year, and you have obviously Indian festivals like Diwali and Holi, so on and so forth. So you get to understand so many different cultures and traditions and understand how they work together, and in that way you're able to socialize much more in a very supportive space. Now, the other side is universities also offer support systems. So let's say if you're struggling with, let's say, finding a job, if you're struggling with, your coursework, if you're struggling generally, from your mental health perspective, the university will have support systems where you can go out. You will be connected with somebody like a mentor, or you could be connected with, other students who are who have gone through this challenge and have come out on the positive side, who will be able to help you navigate through this process. So you will have a lot of opportunities to find this support system through university network. So another great pro of coming to Canada as an international student. The third pro of coming to Canada as an international student is your ability to gain Canadian work experience either to part-time work or through internships or co-ops. Now, international students, as you might know, have the ability to work in Canada for over 40 hours per week based on the recent statement by Government of Canada. Now, this provides a fantastic opportunity for these students to go out there and find some jobs that will help them, convert it into either permanent full-time jobs or to gain that coveted Canadian experience. Now, this is usually done either through, let's say, a co-op term or internships, and as well as part-time work. So usually undergraduate students, potentially at the end of their third year, have around 8 months where they can do co-op, where they're partnered up with an employer. And then the employer usually recruits in a lot of these positions, some of these big companies do, and they're able to give these students some meaningful work for them to understand the workplace norms, the culture, as well as get some meaningful productivity out of them to help them grow in their business. Now, if you're a master's student, there is also an opportunity to do internships over the course of the summer term. And even outside of this, on your normal day-to-day life, a lot of students tend to take up part-time work, let's say in some, either in a professional setup, let's say within the university. I did part-time work within the university, doing marketing and communications. But I've seen other people, let's say, do it in, let's say, a Tim Hortons or like a local coffee shop or something else, where they're not only able to gain that money, but also able to gain that experience, serving customers, understanding various business needs, being able to showcase their skills. So again, a fantastic opportunity for students to gain that Canadian experience. This is also great for employers because without having to shell out a ton of money, they get to understand whether a potential student is a good fit for their organization. And more often than not, again, depending on the organization budget permitting, they tend to keep the student on for a longer term and even offer them permanent jobs through the process. So it's a great way for you to get your foot in. A university also provides a huge support system through this by offering career center services such as resume, cover letter, how do you make them, how to do interview prep. They also open up their whole alumni network where you get to network with some of these people who've already graduated from the program, who've gone out and are already in the job market, and you can then learn from them and be able to use some of the similar strategies to be able to land yourself a great job. Now, worst case scenario, let's say the internships or the co-op placements do not turn out into permanent jobs. When you're applying for jobs after you graduate, you still have an upper leg versus some of the new immigrants that come here because you have gained that valuable Canadian experience that you can talk about during the interviews. And even in your resume and cover letter, the employers will be able to see the Canadian experience that you've gained, as well as the time that you've spent working here, understanding the local culture and norms. So definitely a big pro of coming to Canada as an international student. Now that we've understood the pros of coming to Canada as an international student, let's look at what some of the cons are. And one of the greatest cons for international students is the high amount of tuition fees and the high cost of living depending on where you live. Guys, let's face reality. It is not cheap to come to Canada and study here. Some of the fees that international students pay are so high. In fact, most of them pay at least 3 to 4 times what a local Canadian student pays. So it's definitely very expensive. And in India, not everybody has the availability to be able to access most of these funds. So a lot of them are either coming here by taking educational loans, borrowing money from their relatives, friends, family, and other places. And with no guarantee that, when you come here and you're able to study, things will turn out in a very positive way. So it definitely is a big financial commitment to move here. What I've also seen is that a lot of the scholarships are tailored towards local Canadian students, and there are very few scholarships that are available for international students. So there's going to be heavy competition on that perspective to be able to gain those scholarships. Now, apart from all of this, let's look at cost of living. Inflation has been rising, as you guys know. So the cost of grocery, the cost of school supplies, the cost of electronics for you to do your school day-to-day schoolwork, everything has increased. So without let's say taking a part-time job, it is going to be really difficult for you to focus on your studies and be able to look into some of the other resources to help you find that job. So definitely is not easy coming to Canada as international student and managing by yourself. So definitely something you should consider while moving to Canada, especially as an international student. The second con I wanted to talk about is that there is no guarantee of you finding a job. Back in India, when I was close to my graduation, I always knew that there was going to be some form of on campus placement where I can write an exam, possibly sit in certain interviews, and be able to find an employer or another when I graduate out. But in Canada, no such things exist. Now, the entire onus of finding a job falls on you, and it is up to your skill sets and your abilities to be able to find that dream job that you're always looking for. Now, the university does provide some sort of resources for you to be able to access, let's say, tap into it and be able to find that job. But again, like the complete onus falls on you. So just imagine having to, manage all of your coursework, having to manage all of the living expenses and some of the other living situations that you might have. You will have to do this on top of all of that with very limited support system, so it's very challenging. Now there is also no guarantee that, let's say, if you go out, apply for a bunch of jobs, and that like you're networking with somebody, there's no guarantee again that you will find a job. I can say that from personal experience. I remember when I was first applying for my internships, I got close to 29 rejections before I was able to even land a few interviews and finally find a dream internship. So it was a really humbling experience for me, that it is really difficult to be able to break into the Canadian job society. And it definitely does take a lot of time, energy from your part. So definitely, this is a big con of coming to Canada as an international student. The third and final con I wanted to talk about, and this may not apply to everybody, is falling into a minimum wage trap. Now, let's say if you are somebody who is going through the coursework and you have a part-time job, let's say working at a coffee shop, at a local burger store, or something else, you are earning that money. So you're used to seeing dollars coming into your bank account at the end of every 2 weeks. Now, at the end of graduation, there is obviously going to be fear inside you, especially, let's say, considering if you've taken student loans, you want to pay them back. You've applied for a few resume and cover letter, like to a few jobs, and you've not gotten any callbacks. You will feel that, what, I don't want to leave this job. And so you will start continuing with the part-time work. Now, what happens is that, in the urge to be able to earn more so that you can keep supporting the education, and even if you have to support your family back home, you will either take on more hours there, which will make you sort of just go in a circle within there, and you won't take as much time to be able to apply for jobs. One thing that I've heard is that applying for a job is in itself a full-time job. So usually it takes around 3 to 6 months after graduation for an average student to be able to find a job in this country. So falling into a wage trap is again another big con of coming to Canada as an international student. So guys, now that we've come to the end of the video, I hope I've been able to tell you about some of the pros and cons of coming to Canada as an international student. My intention through this video is not to make you feel scared or afraid of coming to Canada, but to give an unbiased opinion of the various things that can happen if you're coming to Canada as an international student. If you're still looking to come here, and if you're looking to understand what the process is to apply for a study permit, then do check out our video here where we talk about the application process. In the meanwhile, please make sure to hit that subscribe button. Please make sure to like the video so that other people will be able to know about it. And if you have any questions, please let us know in the comment section down below. So until our next video, take care guys. Bye-bye.